In Matthew's version, the Christmas story begins with an unplanned pregnancy of an unmarried teenager engaged to a poor carpenter. Then, upon learning that his fiancée is pregnant with no explanation other than an encounter with God, Joseph planned to divorce Mary quietly to save them both from public disgrace. However, a dream with an angel changed Joseph's mind, and he decided to stick with Mary and her illegitimate child. Then, after all this relationship drama, we are told that a bunch of strange figures from the east appeared in Jerusalem saying, "Where is the child who has been born the King of the Jews?" Now, in contrast to the words of the hymn, "We three kings of Orient are," Matthew does not say that there were three, or that they were kings, or that they were wise. We're simply told that they offered three gifts. The rest is apocryphal fantasy. Magus, the word in Greek, is often translated magi, which really means magician, not kings or wise. There are other magicians in the Bible, in the book of Daniel and in Acts, but they're always perceived quite negatively and cause a lot of trouble. Magicians in the ancient world were not amateur entertainers or people who did card tricks and pull rabbits out of hats, or even professional magicians like Harry Houdini and David Copperfield, who perform great disappearing acts or impossible escapes. These magi were most likely Zoroastrian from Persia, Mede, who were associated in the Hellenistic world with the interpretation of dreams, the study of the stars, hence their ability to follow the constellation in the sky. Given their religious sensibilities, the closest English word for magi is probably sorcerer. Not as fun to sing about sorcerer. Sorcerers conjure images of famous literary wizards, like Merlin from King Arthur, Jafar from Aladdin, Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, or Dumbledore from Harry Potter. However, unlike the modern fascination with wizards magic, in the ancient world, wizards were considered fraudulent phonies who engaged in unreliable techniques to create fantastical predictions filled with lies that were outright laughable. Magi were often associated with superstition and other unexplainable happenings in the world, and were often associated with the low life of drinking and brothels. Some of you are saying right now, "Oh, where I recognize the Magi from." Very few people take the Magi at the time seriously, with one exception. Kings and emperors were particularly interested in astrological signs like comets, stars, and other heavenly phenomenon because they were famous for signaling the birth and the death of political leaders like Caesar Augustus. Matthew may have found a model for the journey of the Magi in the Armenian king Tiridates, who traveled with his own Magi to Rome to pay homage to Emperor Nero. Roman emperors like Nero, Juvenal, Tiberius, Vespasian, Domitian, they had a love-hate relationship with both foreign and domestic magi, sometimes courting their favor, other times expelling them from the city if they read the stars in an unfavorable way, sort of like a cabinet. Magi could be a destabilizing influence in a royal court by predicting events that challenged the emperor, such as the short reign of a leader, or an emperor's imminent death, or the birth of a new king. So it's no surprise here that King Herod was frightened by the appearance of these magi who were inquiring at the birth of the king of the Jews, especially since he considered himself the only rightful king today. So in this Christmas story, the Magi and their activities are delightful. It was an act of treason to defy King Herod's order, to refuse to tell him that they had found not they had found Jesus, to clandestinely then travel home undetected by another road without Herod knowing. However, probably the most profound act of sedition the Magi engaged in was kneeling down, paying homage to peasant Jesus, opening their treasure chest and offering his parents gifts of gold, frankincense, Should have given those gifts to King Herod, right? But instead, they offered them to a poor child born out of wedlock to two unknown Jewish peasants. Anticipating they were Jesus' famous teaching, the Magi were offered the choice to give to King Herod what was Herod's and to give to God what was God's, and they chose to give. There are a variety of explanations about the meaning of these three gifts. Some believe Matthew was copying the story of a Syrian king who offered gold and frankincense and myrrh to the god Apollo in 7 BC. Others believe that the gifts are ordinary things traditionally given to royalty. Myrrh was used as an anointing oil, frankincense, a perfume, gold, of course, valuable commodity. Others believe the gifts had a spirit: gold, a symbol of royalty; frankincense, symbol of divinity; myrrh, a symbol of mortality. More generally, some scholars have said that gold is a symbol of virtue, frankincense, symbol of prayer, and myrrh, a symbol of suffering, because virtue, prayer, and suffering are considered the three gifts required. And when all the former deacons here heard the word suffering, they said, Amen. One of the most splendidly beautiful things about human beings is that we have this to give and receive. We give to each other. We give to organizations and to movements, people and institutions, to the poor and the vulnerable, to the marginalized, to the oppressed. And gift giving can be this amazing, selfless, generous activity. Or it can also be a means of exercising power. French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed that gift giving was inherently a possessive and controlling activity over another person. And so Sartre often gave away so much of his own money that he would have to search his apartment for change to buy coffee. But he didn't see it as an act of generosity. He gave it all away, he said, because he didn't want to be enslaved by possessions or by other people. Very different motivation. True generosity isn't very easy. Quite challenging to try and give a gift that is purely for another person's benefit without expecting some kind of reciprocity in return. Sartre was actually skeptical that we could ever overcome the desire to possess one another with. But a gift is not truly a gift that is given with the explicit or implicit intent to honor, favor, love, adoration, or control, or in order to receive something in return. This is what makes the gift gave so humbly offered them, selfless, sacrificial. They don't ask for anything in return. They didn't demand a token of their encounter, a receipt of exchange. They did not get anything from their offering. They simply gave out of a profound joy. And then they went. One of my favorite traditions about the Magi suggests that Mary and Joseph used the Magi's gift to finance their travel into Egypt, flee from King Herod's murderous plot to kill the other children. Thomas Merton said, "Love is not and will never be a. It is instead a message, and that message is, I love you." We do not become fully human, Merton, until we give ourselves to another. As we deepen in love, the package becomes less and less important until it becomes unimportant altogether. What matters is the infinitely precious, which we can only discover in our love for one another. One of the ways that scholars and other religious leaders believe that we can learn to give the gift of ourselves in love is by offering the only priceless gift we really have, our real is true gift that requires losing oneself in another's concerns or desires, sacrificing what we often regard as our most precious thing, our needs, our own lives, selves, so that we can be truly present with, or, as the cliche you've heard says, the present is a gift. And being present is the gift we can give. We live today in a world where despotic rulers like King Herod continue to act out of brutal fear and violence, continue to separate children from their parents, continue to assassinate people, continue to engage in acts of war, and continue to cause mothers around the world to weep sorrow. And yet, in this world of fear and violence, we have hope because God gave the world Jesus, who was like the gift of a Trojan, a gift that snuck into the violent world as a defenseless, who then turned the world upside. We have hope because God continues to raise up strange people from east and west and all four corners of the world who are called to stand in opposition to the forces of fear and violence with the power of love. We have hope because God continues to raise up leaders like the deacons we will ordain and install today, who have been called to give their gifts and their talents and their treasure and their attention, their very lives, out of joy in order to care for people, build a church that is open to all, and to advance the mission, cultivating an inclusive community for spiritual formation. Social leadership in the church has never been easy, but in the 21st century age of division and scandal, desperation, disaster, ecclesiological despair, leadership in the church may never have been harder than it is. It requires, as it always has, putting our personal preferences and desires and predilections aside so that we can selflessly seek the common good for the church. Regardless of how daunting that task may be, God continues to raise up leaders to make this journey, offer their gift. So today we come to recognize and to celebrate the gift of these leaders and to honor the sacred calling that they've received to share their gifts with us and with the world. And we come to proclaim loudly that they have been chosen and that we will listen to them and support them and care for them and work with them and receive their gift willingly. Most importantly, though, we come to remember that each of us is a gift, and every one of us has been called to use our gifts to stand against the fear and violence of the kingdoms of Herod, build the kingdom of the path to a more equitable and just world requires the gift of virtue, prayer, selfless service, sacrificial generosity, deep attentiveness, and unconditional. It is through these mystical gifts that we offer the greatest gift that can be given, the one the world truly needs, the gift of